everyone. Tia here from Order of the Bookish. Thank you so much for joining in our Author Talks interview. I have an amazing story for you guys today. So this is author Selassie Agroh. She's actually a children's author, and the reason she wrote her book is absolutely inspiring and incredible, and I'm so happy that she's here to share it all with you. So Selassie, I would love to know more about your book and about why you wrote it.
Thank you so much, Tia, for inviting me to your program. In the first bit, my book is entitled Tutu Bento and the New Band, and it's a book that celebrates African culture. I was inspired to write it because I originally come from Ghana, and then I moved here to study master's in architecture. I have a background in architectural design. But then once I finished, I started raising a family, and I have two kids. I have a daughter who's 9 years, and she loves reading. And I realized that living in the UK, there wasn't a lot of books on African culture or that portrayed Black girls or Black boys. So there was something missing. So I decided, okay, I when I was young, I used to love reading as well, and we used to hear stories from our grandparents about culture. So that helped us in creating our values because the stories we tell make us. So why not pass that on to the next generation? Because when they don't know where they come from, they sometimes get lost because it's like you are in the UK, but really you're not really a British citizen in a certain sense. But once you have that African context, you know your family values. Those are things that you can capture in the book for generations to read. So I decided to write a book about our African culture. So the book Tutu Bento is a story about 5 kids, but the main character is Tutu. It's called Tutu, and he plays a trumpet. And he wants to follow in the family tradition. He comes from what I've teamed royal trumpeters. So he comes from a family of royal trumpeters. They all play trumpets. But then he realized that he wants to follow in the footsteps his grandparents have set for him. But he's also in his final year in primary school. So the thing is that his parents want him to take part in the competition. There's a yearly competition that they have, which is the Festival of Sounds. And during the Festival of Sounds, it portrays our African traditional festivals that we have every year, where the whole community comes together and they perform. But the idea behind the Festival of Sounds is for them to tell the story of how they gained their independence as a country. And the country is called Nubia. So how the Nubian people won their independence. And one of the main people who helped them to win their independence were the royal trumpeters. In the Ashanti Kingdom, the trumpeters, when they sound the trumpet, is a sound of war or to invite the people to gather. So the concept is to introduce that idea of where the royal trumpeters come from and to relate that to the Ashanti Kingdom. So I use that as a basis to set the foundation for the story. So Tutu starts, but then because he's in his final year, he has a problem in doing maths. So his parents, in as much as you want to play the trumpet, you want to take part in the competition, his parents are also concerned about his education. And it's something the African parents are really concerned about, that their children, you take your education comes first before anything else. But then you also want the child to also have extracurricular activities that he does, that he's a well-rounded child. So the plan was that if he passes, he struggles in maths. I also struggle in maths, so at a point it's like, okay. So he struggles in maths. So his parents come to an agreement with him that, okay, if you're able to at least get an average in maths, then you can go ahead and take part in the competition. But once you fail, then we are going to pull you out of the band. So in the band, he has his friends. We have Kanko, we have Dambo, we have Jelly, and Sibu. Sibu is Tutu's younger sister. And they play different instruments. So what I've introduced is different traditional instruments that we don't normally see being played. So the only I think instruments that everybody will probably know is a trumpet and then the drums. But then we have what the instruments for the kora, the balafon, and the marimba. Those are all traditional instruments. So the idea is bringing all these instruments together and creating what I call music fusion. And the thing is that everybody is proficient, knows how to play their instruments very well on their own. But then as a band, when they come together, they find out that these instruments are different. They sound different. And these are not instruments you normally find in the band. Because when you're playing the band, you have the drums, you have the trumpets, you probably have the guitar, the keyboard, but those are not what they have. So they have an issue, they have a big case, and they need to try and overcome that to be able to perform. So luckily, Tutu's grandfather, Dada Bento, knows he plays the trumpet as well. And he comes in to help them to try and see how they can come together and create that sound. And Dambo also is very good with the computers. So he's also able to mix sound. So everybody comes together, brings their gifts together, and then they set up the band and they start performing or rehearsing. And so the whole idea is how we come together as a community, how we work together. Even though it's a competition, you're competing with other people, how you come together and take part in that competition. But it's also helping them as kids to know that when you want to do something, you need to work at it. Okay, you can't just say, "Oh, I want to play the trumpet," and that's it. No, there are things, there are obstacles you face along the way. So how do we overcome those obstacles? And whatever decisions we make, is it good enough to take us to the competition or to help us even win the competition? And also the good thing about the school that they are in is that the school also helps them so the school sets up like a sort of a competition for them, an event where all those who have registered to take part in the music competition can come and perform, and their music teachers will give them advice. So it's also showing that the school is also interested in the kids developing other skills apart from just studying. So that's really the whole idea. So the story starts on Tutu Bento, how he's able to come together with his friends to take part in the competition, bringing all their instruments together and seeing if they're able to come up with a song that's good enough to win the competition for them. Thank you.
That's beautiful. I love that. So overall, you have a really wholesome story about, community and family coming together, overcoming struggles, and you're teaching kids and young people who are growing up in a world that is a little bit hard to
Yeah.
be successful in, and you're teaching them like don't give up, just keep going and rely on your community. And I think that's such a beautiful thing that everybody should read and everybody should practice in their daily life. And I think it's absolutely amazing that you've written this and sort of gotten the inspiration for your daughter and for your kids because, this is something that they're going to want to read growing up and they're probably going to pass down to their kids and so on and so forth. So you're creating a generational story that will last a lifetime. That's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So, I do want to jump in a little bit and talk about, some of maybe your struggles as you were writing this book.
Okay, first of all, because this was my first book, I had no idea about writing. So I initially did a draft, which I thought was the final story that I had done. And then I initially gave it to my daughter and my niece to read. And it's like, oh, this is interesting. You should publish it. You should publish it. So then I had to find out how do you even get it published in the first place. So that I started looking around. I spoke to a friend who was an illustrator, and she had published a few books. And she told me, oh, I need to find an agent if I want to do traditional publishing. And then I just looked at the whole idea. It's like, oh my gosh, this is a lot of work. Mind you, during that time, I just had my second child. So it was like I was a fresh mom. I was still trying to balance my career. And then I had this book, and I wasn't like, okay, am I willing to take this plunge and start writing synopsis just to get an agent? And then I spoke to a friend of mine who's like, oh, she knows somebody who's published a book. And so maybe she'll be able to advise me on where to go or how to get it published. So I called this lady, and she introduced me to Ziva. And Ziva is a publisher. She works with ChatX. So then I sent my draft to Ziva that, okay, I have a story I want to publish. Can you have a look at it and just tell me what you think? Because I just said I want to publish it in the next couple of months. And she said, fine. And so I sent her the drafts, which was by then in my mind, it was my complete story. So I sent it to her. She came back a few weeks later, and it's like, this is not this is not this is not a story. This is just a draft. I was just so heartbroken. It's like, draft, how can this be a draft? This is my whole story that I've written. It's like, at that point my mind went blank because I didn't think, like, there's nothing else to write. I have written everything that I knew to write and I'm ready to publish. So what is there? And she said, no, I should look at other books that have been published and see how it is written. I should read more books of that range. So middle grade. So I write for middle grade. So it's like, okay, read more middle grade books, and then just come back and let's have a discussion. So I take some time off and start reading the books I get from my daughter. I start reading them myself, and it's like, okay, there are a lot of things that I need to do. There are a lot of things I need to do. So luckily for me, because she's a publisher and she's also an editor, she took me on. I signed up with her to do 1 year writing course. So I started the journey of actually learning how to write. Even though I'd written a story, I had to go back to learn how to write. And so it was true that we started, she showed me how to outline the story, because I write as a pantser. So once I see that, I just write. There's no outline. I just write. So you need to have to sit down and outline everything, do world building, it was all new to me. And once we did that, then broke them into chapters and I started writing. And even that, after writing, it's like, no, you need to add descriptions. You need more descriptions. You need to add emotions, because when somebody's reading the books that you read, when you read them, you are into the book. When somebody's feeling something, you're able to experience it. So it's not just saying that, oh, this person cuts their leg or they hurt their leg. You must give a description to, like, create that environment so that whoever is reading it can feel it. It's like watching a movie. So I had to learn how to use descriptions. And because my daughter is in school, is in primary school, I have these English books that she's using to learn. So I also started, when she has homeworks, I'm also reading. I'm learning pronouns. I'm learning punctuations. Because one of the difficult things I had was punctuations, getting my punctuations right. And it was so difficult. I had to go through the whole story to, just to get everything right. But I think it was very helpful for me. But it's just that the initial lesson, that when she said, no, it's just a draft, it just shut me down. I was like, I didn't know what else I was going to do, because then I think I had about 17,000 words that I had written. And I thought, well, that's the most I have written anything for my thesis was about 3,000 words. So for me to have written about 17,000, that was a lot. And just to say that it's not enough, I was like, okay. But then just sitting down and willing to learn, I think that was, for me, the key was learning to learn and not just publish anything because you want to get it published. So I took time off, started going. Every week we had a one-to-one session to improve my writing. So I actually learned how to write then. And by the time we were finished, I had so many words. From 17,000, I'd gone to 70,000 words. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, how did this happen? But it was just because I went through that process of learning and then reading and researching what others have done as well. So that really, that helped me along the way. Yeah.
That's really great. And, so I just did an interview with Ziva as well. And she was telling me that when she published her first book, she took it to a publisher and they told her the exact same thing. You don't have enough words. It's not enough of a story to publish. And I hear that so many times from authors. They query their book and they get the response back of, it's not enough. You need to add more. And I think that's so funny. And I love that, you took the opportunity, you used your daughter's homework, and not only did you do research for the actual book, the background and the culture and the music instruments and all of that, but you also did research just for learning how to write, learning how to world build, and learning how to plot, because that is a whole separate skill in and of itself. Writing a book I think a lot of people think it's easy, and it's not easy.
No, not at all. It's not easy at all.
Yeah, no. So I absolutely love your cover. Can we talk about this for a second? Because your cover, of course, you have the main character, he's holding his trumpet. Can you tell us about more of what's going on in the background? I see a stage, I see, celebration going on. Can you tell us about your cover?
Okay, so the cover, let me just show it in the book here. So the
Oh,
cover, so
yeah.
that's Tutu, that's the main character, Tutu Bento, on there, and he's holding his trumpet because he's the main character in the book. And because it's also about the festival, the main, which is the festival of sounds. So we try to capture him sitting on stage because the whole idea is about the competition and the festival. So the cover portrays he the protagonist, Tutu Bento, and then showing that there's a celebration that it's going to happen in the book. So and because it's for kids, you want to use bright colors that will capture them their imagination when they see it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So, tip for authors, when you're writing something for children, middle grade, you do want to use bright, eye-catching colors because, it's the kid most of the time that's going to see it on a bookshelf and say, "Hey, that looks cool. I want that one." And then,
Yeah.
of course, it has to pass the parents' test of
Yeah.
is it kid friendly? So one of the things I want to talk about is how do you create a story that's for kids, but also for adults? Because you do have to kind of hit both markets, which is a bit of a challenge. You need to make sure that it'll capture the children's attention, but be approved by the parents. So, how do you write in a way that hits both groups?
Well, in terms of like the kids, it's the word. One thing I realized that when you're writing, especially for middle grade, there are kids who are moving from chapter books to very big books. Okay, so they're also learning. So the idea is because I come from, but English is not my first language. So writing in English is more like how should this creative writing or learning words. And at this age, they are learning how to use words. They are learning how to use adjectives, idioms. So in terms of the kids and the parents, you see that you have a certain point where you are meeting both needs for the tell a story for the kids to enjoy, but at the same time for them to learn the language or to learn about idioms or how to express themselves. And I think it's something that parents would also want their kids to do. It's not just that they are reading for fun, but as they are reading, they are also learning, they are picking up words. Because I rather with my daughter, the more she reads, the more she's able to write, it improves her English, her comprehension also improves, and the words she uses when she's doing extended writing, it's all comes from reading more books. Okay, so when you have a book like Tutu Bento, and the parent sees it and also reads it, the parents finds out that it's not just a story, but there are so many things that you capture in there. You capture the culture, which you capture values, and I think more parents want their kids to have values, and values are very important things that we want our kids to have. Because once you value things, you value family, you value community, you value being resilient, and if you portray that in a book and the parent sees it, the parent is more likely to encourage the child to read it because they know that once that child reads it, they will know that, okay, if I have a problem, there's a way to go about it. I don't have to easily give up. So apart from meeting the educational needs, you're also meeting the social needs as well. So that's where the balance comes in for middle grade. If you want your book for parents to buy or for children to also be interested, then you need to have that balance where you meet education and then the social aspect. Yeah.
That is great advice. Yeah, that's probably a really hard thing to hit because as you're going through the story, you do have to think about how am I going to incorporate all of these things to make it appealing for, the younger demographic and the older demographic and put
Yeah.
in that social and educational aspect. That is a lot of work.
It
I
is.
like
It
I like
is.
writing young adults, like high school and adult work. So I'm essentially writing for like people my age and things that I want to read. So I can't even imagine how like crazy difficult it must be to write of the parent mindset and the children mindset. That just seems like extra work on top of it.
It was extra work. It was extra work because sometimes some of the words I use because I'm an adult. Some of the words I use when I use them I had Ziva going through them, and when she reads them, it's like, oh, this word is too strong. A child wouldn't say that. So when you're writing, think, because I'm writing in the first person, I have to think how Tutu thinks. He's a 10-year-old. So I'm thinking, how do I think as an adult? I have to be thinking as he thinks, and then write at the same time. Certain places I have to think as like an adult. So some of the times I get my daughter to read and I ask her, what do you think? Because she's 9. It's like, okay, so what do you think about this? What the wording I used, do you understand it? What does it mean as well? So it was very difficult. I told myself I wouldn't do that to myself again. But then when you finish, you realize I know what you've done. It's you had to. I also had to be resilient in what I wanted to do and what I wanted to achieve. So I couldn't just give up, and I had to, because I said to myself, well, some of the words are difficult, but then you're also letting them learn new words. So that's the whole idea. When you put in a new word, you can go and look in a dictionary and find out what it means. Because I read when my daughter comes in, the teachers tell you, oh, she's reading a lot, but she should have a notebook where she writes new words and then use a dictionary to see what it means. That improves her vocabulary. So, and because they are at the stage where they're going to high school after, it's good that you increase their vocabulary, so they learn new words which they are not used to as well. But it was very difficult task that I had to actually get a book on descriptions. I had to get a dictionary on my side just to have that balance and know how to maybe use a different wording for some of them. Yeah.
Wow, so much work going into a book. Oh gosh, and you made such an incredible story. So I do want to jump a little bit more into, the marketing for this book. So you are marketing, you have the unique experience of, and I say unique, but also difficult experience of writing a book, like you said, of your culture in a place where, not a lot of people are talking about it, are creating books like what you're creating. So have you found it to be difficult at all marketing your book in an area where you're not seeing similar stories?
Yes, and I think I'm still learning because the book just got released this year. It's something I'm still learning to do marketing, and I'm beginning to find that it's something that it's coming up now. There are lots more people actually out there trying to bring diverse books into the system. So actually, next weekend there's this Black British Book Festival. So you see that they're trying to bring a lot of Black authors together just to create that environment for people, just to create the awareness that there are more diverse books and also to push for diverse books into the marketplace. And then one thing I have to do is also go into the schools as well. So I've been to my daughter's school. I'm trying to get to a few local schools around to try and just have an author visit and then spend time with the kids, read to them the story, and then I do a presentation, actually show them the instruments that are in the book, and then show them some of the music forms that I talk about in the book. So that's the way to promote it. And then also in my local library, this month in the UK is Black History Month. So I have book events in my local library where I'll be reading the book and also doing some book signing and hopefully present the story to the community so that there's a certain awareness created there. Yeah. But
That's
I think
amazing.
I mean, one of my first experience or one of the book events I went, it was surprising that I set up my book, my stand and everything, and then I was just waiting for people to come from one of the schools. And as people went by, people were just passing, and then a few people stood and asked, "Oh, where's the author?" And I'm thinking, I was like, "Oh,"
Oh no.
I was like, "Yeah." So I realized that it's something that is missing. We don't really see a lot of Black people writing books, and especially the book is big. It's a big book, so it's not your baby picture books that you probably see that okay but because it's a big volume. So I just realized that no, it's something that we need to create an awareness for so that people know that okay, we also have our stories that we captured into books and we want to promote it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing. So you're being proactive in your marketing, you're showing up, you're going to these festivals, you're going to libraries, you're showing up at schools. And that is one thing a lot of authors don't realize that they can do. If you have, your physical books, you can
Yeah,
go and do a presentation in a school, and hopefully the school actually purchases your books from whatever platform you're published on. Like if you have Ingram Spark, hopefully that school after your presentation will go and buy a few of your books. And
yeah,
you just continue growing that way. That's
yeah,
really smart idea that all authors should take note of immediately.
yeah,
Just show
yeah,
up, go to festivals, go to libraries, go to schools, and be, a physical presence out in the world, not
yeah,
just social media, but, physical.
yeah.
So I would love to know, do you have any more tips for new indie authors or authors wanting to find an agent, find a publisher? Because I know you were talking about, that was a little bit of a struggle. Do you have any tips for other authors?
Well, in terms of publishing, I think there are different ways. It's either you want to be self-published or you want to go the traditional route. So you really need to do a lot of research to find out what will work for you. And for me, because I was new to the whole experience, I knew that I didn't have the time to start writing synopsis and getting so many rejections. Like it wasn't something I wanted. I really wanted to do, and I also wanted to find somebody who would actually help me along the journey and help me develop the art of writing. Because and I think that finding Ziva really helped me. I searched and I found her, and she was willing to go on that journey with me.
Yeah.
So you need to be able to research, find out, reach out to different people who have published, and ask them their journey, or even have recommendation, have people recommend publishers to you, and then you can reach out to them. And I think one thing that also helped me was to what Ziba encouraged me was to find a writing group to join and not just be on your own, because you can write, but then who is looking at your work, who is giving you critique, you know. And I joined a critique group. So there are five of us. Every 2 weeks we meet together. We just send our works to each other, and then we have to critique it, and then I come back, we give you feedback, and then we worked on that. So you find a group that you can, a writers group that you can work with, so that you also have that help and also build that confidence. Because if you're new, it's a new territory you're going into. So you really need somebody who's a bit experienced to mentor you and to help you along the journey, so that you avoid certain pitfalls that people make along. Because a lot of people have lessons. It's better to learn from somebody's lesson than to learn from your own experience. Yeah, so that's what I advise new authors or people who want to write a new book. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we have these interviews, because I do want more authors to learn, from authors who have already been through this, so that the authors watching this don't have to make the same mistake or have to go through the same trials and errors. And I think it's really important that we build this community of writers and authors, so that, and your book talks all about community. You have your community in your area where you're living, your school, your family, your friends, and you now actually have your writing community, and it's so important to have that help and support from the people around you as you grow in your life. You're not going to grow if you're just doing it on your own. You do need a little bit of help. And I think that it is incredible that, you're living and you're sharing your voice and you're growing and you're sharing this book with us of your culture and your family and your experiences. So thank you so much for coming on. It has been absolutely amazing talking to you and hearing about your story and your inspiration. And everyone, if you haven't read this book yet, I'm going to link it below. Make sure you go and watch it, go and read it immediately. It's an amazing story. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much here for having me.
Happy
Bye.
reading, everybody.